I'm currently reading OpenGL Survival 7th edition. From this book, Part 1, Chapter 5 Data. I'm reading about buffers. From page 137, right before uniform, it's about 20 pages. From Chapter 5 Data, if you look for binding index, you can find binding index with a vertex array attribute binding in this function binding index. This binding index is also used vertex array, vertex buffer, binding index. In my current episode, we will learn what binding index means. If you want to follow my current session from my previous video, C++ 17, 20, 23 CUDA SQL OpenGL from this playlist, if you scroll down, you can find episode 95. If you haven't watched my previous episode, episode 95, OpenGL Buffer 5, you may have difficulties following my current and future sessions. Show more, download current video source code. Please click it. Show in folder, unzip it. Rename 96. Copy. Select your working folder. Paste it. Double click the solution. Select this project. Set as startup project. Press Ctrl F5. You should be able to build and run successfully. Now close it. From this project source files, open source.cpp. Please understand that we created this project in episode 94. Also, in episode 95, I explained Vertex attributes or Vertex attributes index. Now, I will explain binding index. We need binding index because we use multiple buffers. We are using two buffers. One is for positions. The other is for colors. So, in this vertex shader, I will auto hide. We use two attributes, position attribute, color attribute, to feed data to position attribute and to color attributes. We created two vertex buffer objects. Binding index is used vertex array, vertex buffer function. Now watch carefully the pop-up window. We need binding index, so I used value 0 for binding index. The first vertex buffer object, indexed 0, is used to feed data to position. Also note that vertex array attribute binding. In this function, we also use binding index. We have to provide the same binding index for vertex array attribute binding and the vertex array vertex buffer. Okay? In this case, we provided 0, 0 for binding index. In the same manner, vertex array, vertex buffer, we provided one for binding index. This is binding index. Also, vertex array, attribute binding, we passed one for binding index. Because we are using two buffers, we need two binding index. Here, we can define, for example, enum binding index position binding index color. I defined enumeration. Copy this position. We can put binding index here for position. We also need the same binding index for position in vertex array attribute binding. Now press Ctrl F5. It should build and run successfully. Now close it. In the same manner, vertex array, vertex buffer, this is for attribute color. So binding index color, copy. We also need binding index for vertex array attribute binding. Now press Ctrl F5. It should build and run successfully. So we have to provide the same binding index for vertex array, vertex buffer, vertex array attribute binding in two places. Identical binding index. Also, vertex array, vertex buffer, binding index position, vertex array attribute binding, binding index position. We have to provide the same binding position. Press Ctrl F5 once again. It should build and run successfully. Now, instead of providing attribute location for position and color, we can let the shader compiler determine the attribute index. We can let OpenGL shader compiler determine the attribute index for position and color. In such case, I would advise you to use unique name that would not conflict with other names. For example, vPosition, vColor, then vPosition here, vColor here. Because if you change your name later, it can cause trouble. So try to use unique, distinct names that would not conflict, that would not cause name clashes. Now, scroll down. We can add more members. GL int attrib index position, set it -1, copy, paste, attrib index color, initialize with negative numbers. Then, after successfully compiling shader program, we can retrieve attrib index position. We can use gl get attrib location. We provide program, then string for position. It is case sensitive. If we inadvertently change the name later, it should cause error. So we need error checking code here. Throw if true. We have to test like this. Equals -1. It means it is failed. Then failed to retrieve attrib index position. In the same manner, this attrib color gl get attrib location. This program v color, this attribute's name here. In the same manner, we can test like this. I fixed our code like this. Now we can use in this function Vertex array attrib format. We need to specify attrib index. This is now this attrib index position. We need this value also here. Also, in this function, it says glu int index. This is also attrib index. So I used attrib index position in 3 places. Once in enable vertex attrib array, vertex array attrib format, vertex array attrib binding. So the common thing is attrib in 3 places. So when it contains the name attrib in the function, then we have to provide attrib index position. In the same manner, attrib, we need this attrib index color because we are specifying attribute for color. Then attrib, we need this attrib index color. Also here this attrib index color. Also here this attrib index color. So we used attrib index color in 3 places. Now press Ctrl F5. It should build and run successfully. In this episode, we learned binding index, also attrib index. While reading this book, especially from chapter 5, data, you have to pay special attention to attrib index and binding index. Otherwise, understanding this book is very difficult. In my next episode, I will discuss feeding Vertex shader from buffer. If you scroll down, you can find listing 5.8, listing 5.8 multiple interleaved Vertex attributes. I will discuss this part of code in my next episode. Please don't miss my next episode about multiple interleaved Vertex attributes.